Bruno Bettelheim describes the concentration camp situation as an extreme situation. Extreme situation addicts are in place and in charge of our society at the time that I'm writing, which is June 2025. They've removed funding from civil relief and sustainable futures, leading to fearful and oppressive conditions. I, for one, can hardly bear what Greta Thunberg has decided to do in taking the freedom fulfiller to Gaza, to whom my heart has long gone out, but I do understand. Probably it annoys those who do watch me, like the police department and UW dialectical predators, to have my views recorded, but my reach is small, greeted with skepticism. And after all, they're the ones who've been forcing me to do it, with Clinton coming up with a death threat if I refuse. So the British, of course, have a claim on the material and feel that they can evade their role in what happened by promoting the storyline that has been agreed on. Amanda Harcourt, an attorney for Paul McCartney, who particularly loves the push me, pull you refrain, once said, when you see a particularly fine turn of phrase, strike it out. She must have something going with Dead Burnham, because like Peter Gabriel, who Amanda Harcourt was introduced to me by, Dead Burnham didn't like crediting me for my contributions. At the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Art, where I met Leslie Katz, the darling of Robert Fripp, whose slanders about me got me mutilated and used, and the whole story justified. I met at the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts. She was favored by Deb Burnham. There I also met Dina Michaels and Eric Horn. One night in the laundry room, Eric Horn and I wrote a poem, and he wanted to put in Whitewater or Clinging to Stones. I don't remember which. The other, Clinging to Stones, I added in Whitewater. And it became the title of the poetry book, Free Writing Yearbook. But Deb Burnham didn't want to credit me with having been, she called me a liar. She said the title of the book came from Eric Horn. Dina Michaels had something going with Eric Horn. She is an important character who went to Radcliffe, a Zionist from State College, who told me that when people are pushed into extreme situations where they have nothing and everything has been taken by them, from them, they turn to God. Well, Obama was funded by Jeffin, and Jeffin was working with Amanda Harcourt. The story that they promoted is somewhat typically parochial. It comes from Greg Carl's family. The idea that I could have saved John Lennon if I had paid attention to Gail Burstyn, but I was too distracted by Leslie Capps. That's the storyline. And Obama brokered that storyline for reasons that are clearly criminal, but also were very popular. The idea that a person should die to protect another person is the root story at the heart of the draft board that Greg Carl represented. His brother would always mention that their brother Mark, who I knew, drowned saving another person. The only person who didn't was allowed to not feel that they should be pushed into extreme situations to prove their faith, to die for their peers, was John Lennon, and he was dead. So you can do away with all of that. And Obama sort of saw me in his role as Macbeth. This is, of course, a Shakespearean story all told that John Lennon was a role in. He didn't actually die, by my estimation, but we'll pretend he did. We won't kill him, but we'll say we killed him. Obama saw me as Banquo's ghost, sort of, because I was from Bush's ship in the Navy. And he wanted to be more star-studded than just the black man who Bush pulled a fraud with after killing JFK. And by blaming me for Lennon's murder, the story ceases to be about JFK, even though that's what the script is about. It becomes exclusively and only about John Lennon. And to underscore this fascinating twist of Britain, they murdered Circe Kennedy. And the way they got away with it speaks loudly about what is happening in Gaza and in Tacoma tomorrow. Because Seattle was part of this trickery and mafia. They came to bat for both Gail and Leslie. If John Lennon really died, then Gail and Leslie were the ones who conspired to do that. They worked together on the script. Leslie was named in the script. And she wasn't innocent of it. I was innocent of it. Josh Shapiro and his gang forged my name on that royal bomb. But it's about the AIDS attack. And they cleverly pretend that it isn't in order to promote the people who wrote it. And that's Seattle's position. Why would the Seattle queers help the people who did it? For one reason, greed. They're invested in an Ono black market, a takeover. John Schulman, Leslie's partner, was stealing from the museum in Pittsburgh and raising millions and millions of dollars that he no doubt gave to some people who were in the loop in Pittsburgh, Pittsburghers, Yinzers, who come and go and for hire. Kind of people who thought nothing of torturing me for this gang. So what happened was that the gays were exonerated of the meaning of the script. Some of them did die, but they were exonerated of the meaning of the script. And Robert Fripp of King Crimson says that I was not exonerated. I was not exonerated. The meaning of the script is what Greg Carl is doing to me with the help of the Black Panthers and the Green Party in Tacoma. which is torturing me and scaring me. What they're hoping to do is pull an Ian Paisley sort of situation where riots break out and people just start throwing rocks and get hurt. And they can just sort of dust the Department of Education of my presence that way. You might wonder, what exactly do they think they're doing? Well, it's a fundamentalist system internationally. They want a universal draft to belief in fundamentalist religion. No one is allowed to escape that. You ask, why would Zappa and Foucault and Salman Rushdie play a role in an international God law syndicate? Why would John Lennon's people be so happy to promote an international God law system? Part of the reason is that as controllers, they take the power to control people and order the draft board seriously, but they don't take the values that they're promoting seriously. Another part of it is that it was just doing lip service to the idea of dissent being anything other than satanic. See, what Rushdie did and Foucault did and Zappa did was show the deterioration of the flesh begins in deterioration of the spirit. And they called it the satanic verses, jazz from hell. And Foucault met with the Ayatollah and then lit himself on fire at the manor of Aaron Bushnell. In other words, these people are not just unified in silence. They're unified in the idea of some sort of sacred martyrdom as proof of virtue, which flies in the face of public safety, obviously. But they're addicts to extreme situations. So how do I know that Hamas was tricking people? An element of Hamas was working with Donald Trump on setting up Gaza. One way is the role of Russia, the Russian Orthodox Church. You see, the conflict does go on in conventional warfare between Kiev and Moscow, but that doesn't mean that the powers that be didn't want to remove the forces that might give rise to a human rights movement internationally as distinct from a God law syndicate of the ultra powerful and ultra rich. In other words, they were not concerning themselves with sustainable development goals, with legal systems, respectable authorities who enforced laws judiciously, and healthcare and senior citizen safety. They weren't concerning themselves with that. They were pursuing the big idea where everybody is expendable to the powerful mobocrats like Martin Scorsese, Donald Trump, and Vladimir Putin. Oliver Stone was one of the emissaries working with, playing the diplomatic lines that Henry Kissinger played. So these were people who were in the loop, and there were black representatives like Obama, Spike Oldby, yes, Spike Oldby. And one of the most clear demarcations of this business is here in Tacoma, where they have location indicators that are of a mnemonic gaslighting direction. They have a cosmonaut overlooking a supernova that says hair. Amanda Harcourt is an attorney from here. Supernova overlooked by the cosmonaut, and they have Star Sandwich around the corner. And the Center for Spiritual Living, which used to use a Palestinian flag for its design, for its banner. So then this predates the business with the Zionists in Kiev and Tel Aviv getting it on with Hamas to stomp out Gaza. And it's a rave massacre situation. The supernova was a supernova rave. If you look at Seattle, the rave massacre in Seattle was very similar. It was a MAGA type, Make America Great Again type massacre of the rave. If you look at the way that Greg Carl operated, Schulman and the pornography syndicate used me over and over again. And I was trying to find out who was behind it, and I got to their papers where they wrote the personas subjected to successive degradations of the X motive, which is telltale. But what the media does, what the blackout media does, the gaslighting Mnemonic media is they say, well, this is a final accounting for God law on sexual morality. Just pick one of the girls and we'll spin her through the system. So they pick a girl, spin her through the system, and get all her other boyfriends to say you're violating her privacy while they have these Ian Paisley riots where they poison food and kill Cersei Kennedy and so on. So not all of the Hamas people were involved. Certainly not all of the Palestinians were involved. But enough people were unified in silence when it came to John Lennon that they're now sandbaggers crying about something that they refused to intervene to stop because Shulman, Katz, and Burstyn and David Jeffen were all people I was warning about because of the other attack. And they just played a studio wrestling game where the gays came out and said, we're fonder of the people who tortured you, Crary. The meaning is something that falls on you. And it's a sad statement about Pittsburgh public schools and the city of Seattle.